Greetings and welcome to Spin a Yarn Live, the Tea Time Book Club and Crafting Circle, where the camera somehow got off center. And it's still off center. Oh boy. Oh well. This is our camera angle for the day.
Exciting and new.
Woo! Alright, we are talking about the second book of the Old Kingdom series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Lirael. You can interact with the stream by going to Twitter at #YarnItAll. I have not set up a Reddit thread, so don't go there. You can also comment in the chat of the YouTubes. Yay! Alright, so let us know what you're working on, what you're drinking, and where are you working on?
So, I haven't finished my lace shawl yet, because that thing's supposed to be like 5.5 feet long. I haven't finished it. So I'm taking a little break, and I'm just doing a purple crocheted cowl, little infinity scarf thingy doodle. Here it is. So lovely and pretty and purple. But yeah, that's what I'm working on. Paul's working on same old, same old.
Same old, same old. I am there, and it will look almost identical at the end of the episode.
Most likely.
Most likely.
You should really work on it some outside of the episode so that maybe, just maybe, he'll complete it before the end of the calendar year.
Probably not.
He'll still be working on it even when Peace Talks finally comes out.
Oh my goodness. Not sure it'll take me that long.
Yeah, well, we'll see. That all depends on Jim Butcher and done. But we're not talking about Jim Butcher. We're talking about Garth Nix.
Yes.
And his very cool Old Kingdom series. Not his only series. But before we get into that, we are having another tea from the olivefusionstore.com. Again, this is when we went out west way back in March, out to Breckenridge, Colorado. This is actually one of the teas we haven't sampled yet. This is a sweet ginger green tea. It contains ginger, lemon pieces, lemongrass, and honey. And it says to steep for 3 or 4 minutes. For every one rounded teaspoon per 8 ounces of water.
Oh, hold on.
I suspect...
Okay, go ahead.
I suspect either I didn't let it steep for long enough, or perhaps there was more water than I think it's a 16-ounce teapot, or a little cast iron teapots that I got from Tijuana back before Starbucks closed the stores. I'm still very salty about that. Stupid Starbucks. Anyway, so it's from the way I have steeped it, it's very, very light. I was hesitant at first because I'm not a big fan of ginger, but I do like it, and you can taste a little bit of lemongrass in it. And the green tea, there's a little hint of ginger. Enough that I'm like on the cusp of not liking it, but it's pleasant. It's pleasant.
Yeah.
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 But it probably could have stood to be steeped for a little while longer. I assumed I steeped it for 4 minutes, but I kind of got to my phone to set a timer a little late, so I could have it probably steeped for a little less than 4 minutes, but definitely at least 3, because I set the timer for 3.
Yeah.
But in any case, so yes, second. Oh, sorry.
First we can go to our viewers and see what they're working on.
Oh yeah. Who's working on what? Most likely.
So right now, long-term viewer and supporter of the channel, my mom, is working on a TARDIS hat and gloves.
A TARDIS hat and gloves.
While drinking Prince of Wales.
Oh, a lovely tea.
Yes.
Absolutely fabio.
So.
That's very cool.
That's the input we got. Now we can talk about Lirael.
Alrighty, so second in the
also.
Old Kingdom trilogy. I'm going to use the term trilogy a little bit in like quotations because I was doing a little research, and so as some of you know, I tend to download the books onto my Nook, even if we own the physical book. Paul usually reads that one, and then I'm able to take my Nook to work and like read it on my breaks or at lunch or whatever. And the Lirael version that I downloaded also had an excerpt from Clariel. And I was like, oh, Lirael, what is that? Is that a continuation? Turns out it's actually a prequel to the Sabriel book. So I've not actually looked at the excerpt because I didn't want, like spoilers or anything like that. I assume maybe Lirael was the aunt that taught Sabriel's dad, maybe. Another fun thing, we actually got to hear her father's name. Now we know the previous Ed Borson's name, which was Tyrell or something like that. Tyrael.
Yeah, I wrote that, or Tertial.
Tertial. Yeah. So
Tertial.
So that was his name. But let's see. So the first thing I noticed when reading this book, and I wrote this down, because like I said, I was at work. I don't really enjoy my work as much as I love the people I work with. It's all very boring. Just looking at spreadsheets and stuff. So I wrote down, I said, well, for a series about necromancy, this is a depressing way to start a book.
Oh my goodness.
2, a young woman contemplating suicide.
Yep.
And then I thought about it and go, well, now the first book opened up with us believing that Sabriel's father was either dead or stuck in death. Also not exactly what you would call an encouraging thought.
Yeah.
But she had the purpose of going and at least locating him to help him and save him. This girl went straight up to the top of the glacier and was like, I'm totally going to throw myself off. And I was like,
almost. She spent like, what, a couple hours or all afternoon there.
Right. She couldn't bring herself to do it.
Yeah.
Which is good, obviously. It's good.
Yeah.
But it just struck me that when she was up there, and then, of course, she saw the meeting when Sabriel and Touchstone came to speak with the Claire, to speak with them, they had said, you will forget this whole situation until the need arises for you to remember. And as of yet, we haven't seen her remember it. And it's kind of like, I wonder if she's going to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long book. A lot happened in this book. But it's more like...
But she also hasn't met Touchstone and Sabriel yet.
She hasn't met them yet.
So that's one quick... Oh, go ahead. Finish your thought? No? Okay. That's one weird thing is Touchstone is basically a derogatory term, which I feel like means the equivalent of like village fool or
they talked about in the
like
first book.
bastard son or something.
No. It means fool.
But yet,
because Mogget named him.
Yeah, so let's call it Jester.
Okay.
But now we have King Jester. He didn't bring back his old name.
He doesn't remember his old name.
Does he still not remember?
No.
Can Mogget not?
Mogget's not gonna. Mogget's like, Touchstone.
Yeah, no, it just...
Or
like, he could have chosen pretty much any new name and nobody would know.
Sabriel knows him as Touchstone. I think it's just more of a lovers thing.
I don't know if modern society recognizes Touchstone as that derogatory term anymore. So, I mean, it could just be an old-sounding term that you don't really think about.
Well, maybe. Again, in the first book when Sabriel met him and he was like, oh, just call me Touchstone, she has her inner thoughts of, that's a fool's name.
Oh, well then, yeah, maybe.
Kind of like how we think of someone named, Tiffany or Roxy or something. You often think, oh, well, not exactly the brightest, crayon in the box.
Rude.
But exactly, it's an old stereotype. But anywho, back to this book. We have the Lirael is Sabriel's
dun dun dun
sister. Now, as someone who already knew that, and I guess because I had forgotten almost everything else that had happened in this book.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was going through and it was kind of frustrating because I was like, oh, obviously Sameth is not the Aporson in waiting, but I can't, what are we going to do with it?
Well, and nobody would know that because he doesn't talk to his sister and his parents aren't around enough to realize.
Yeah, that's kind of weird, I feel like. Like, the relationship with his parents, I do understand. They're constantly going off, having to do this, that, and the other. But he and his sister don't get along very well. I don't know, they're very close in age. She's, I think they said 16 months older or something like that. They're very, very close in age. So she's 18, or a little over. So it was
Did they end up going to the same school?
Well, no, they couldn't have done. She went to a girls' school. He went to a boys' school.
So they
went to a
really
different school,
didn't
yeah.
see each other much growing up, I imagine.
know, I guess, but she just seems like, she seems like she means well.
Yeah,
But she is definitely taking on the role of, well, I'm certainly going to be the queen, and you're supposed to be the person.
Yeah.
And you're also my little brother, so as older siblings are wont to do. But yeah, I was a little distraught by the lack of sibling
familiarity,
I guess, maybe. But you're right, they both went to a boarding school, and they were different boarding schools, obviously one for girls, one for boys.
Yeah, and...
So I guess they didn't spend a lot of time together, and I guess she sort of has the expectations of, she's like, well, I'm clearly not going to be the person in waiting. It's clearly not me. It must be you.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Which, yeah, I understand that, because it definitely seems like the Horson line has to follow a direct lineage. Now, it can skip around. For instance, it can go from elder sister to younger sister, and then, I mean, as we learned, back actually in the first book, Sabriel's father was actually taught by his aunt, so it can kind of zigzag about a little bit. So, like, when I had heard about Lirael, I thought it was going to be the continuation.
Right.
Like, I thought it was going to be Lirael's daughter, or perhaps a grand niece or nephew, or not nephew, but a grand niece or something like that. But,
well, I mean, it could be either. Oh, well, yeah, Lirael is more of a female. No, what I'm saying is when you were thinking, you said niece or nephew, or just niece, and I was like, oh, it could be both, because males can be Horsons, but the name...
But the name seems pretty feminine.
Yeah.
So we have to deal with this very poor, this troubled girl, it's very upsetting, but it's nice to know that she sort of has found more of her place. Yeah. Because she definitely felt like she didn't belong anywhere,
except the library.
Disreputable dog was her best friend. But now it's like, oh, she does have a family. She's been traveling with her nephew this whole time, and he's so excited. He's like, oh my gosh, my father's going to love this. He doesn't have any family left. They're all
he's
dead.
Mostly just excited that he's no longer that person in radio.
Yeah, he's like, oh, thank Charter. He was so relieved. Yeah. And Mogget, of course, is sitting there going, I know.
Yep.
And we're like, oh,
Mogget.
Furball.
Before we get off to... Well, yeah, let's just go ahead into Mogget. So, we also get a lot more descriptions from a free magic being actually opening up a little bit, which was cool. Disreputable dog giving Lirael some information about the beginning of the charter.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
And we get the 9 with...
One of the 9 having been, was like, oh, I don't want to go forward with what these other 7 are doing, and I guess sought to betray, maybe, and then it seemed to have been controlled or captured or something, so it's like, maybe that's Mogget.
Well, yeah, so there are 2.
Could be that's Mogget.
One of them kind of ignored the whole thing, and then became
could be the
bound.
Dog.
No. Where is that? I wrote down page numbers. Page 5. Oh, here.
I think about it. Tell me.
There's 2 pages. Page 536 and 560. Gives 2 different. I think 536 is the bells. Okay, yeah. So...
Good rhyme for pups to learn, but so the 5.
Oh, yeah.
Began with the 9 who were most powerful. Yet of the 9, only 7 agreed to make the charter. 1 chose to ignore the 7's work, but was finally bound to serve the charter. And the 9th fought and was barely defeated. And
at the very end of the book, we get the statement from the 9th.
Yeah.
So, before that, because that's... the epilogue. No, after that, actually.
Yeah, it was after the epilogue, because we talked about the thing that...
At the end of the epilogue.
Is within...
I'll up it. So, basically, the one who fought...
Broken into and buried under hill.
Oranus.
Yeah, but lone Oranus was put out of the light. Broken into and buried under a hill.
Yeah, and then it seems like that's enemy.
Whatever has taken hold of
Nick. But yeah, it seems like the one who, number 8, who kind of ignored things but was eventually bound to serve anyways. That feels very Mogget-ish.
I think that's probably Mogget. Like, because he doesn't really care one way or another, but he is resentful towards the Aporson who he's forced into servitude.
If that is true, because we're talking about almost deity-level powers here.
Yeah.
When he's unbound, that cannot be his full form, because he's pretty easy to put down.
He's easy to put down only because of the ring, of the
I mean,
collar.
yeah, because of the ring, but, like, even the fight, it's not... It doesn't feel powerful enough for that to be
I think
his
what it
full
is,
form.
I think what it is that being constrained to the cat form for so long, it takes him a while to stretch out. And
probably.
Kind of like how when Lirael has to step out of her charter skin. It takes her a little while to adjust. It takes her a couple of hours even to not, react a certain way, or she becomes sensitive to light when she, turns back from the owl and all that. But yeah, so it's so it's very interesting. So we're learning a little bit more.
We were talking about, of course, Mogget. It feels like Mogget might be the 8th charter.
Yeah.
And we get after Lirael mentions the names of the bells or whatnot. The disreputable dog talks about walking a bunch. And then, when they pass under the bridge, and...
The dog howls the note to make the dude walk.
Yeah, so I think that the dog is actually kind of remnants of Kilbeth, the walker.
Ooh, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe, I didn't think about that.
I mean, yeah, most of the... And I feel like the dog would be, number 6 or number 7, not bound into a bloodline or into a wall, because she still has kind of her free will and whatnot.
Yeah.
But most of her power went into the bells and helping the charter.
Yeah.
It feels right.
I think so. Which bears the question, because how many bells are there?
7. 7 bells.
There are 7 bells.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mogget, if he's not, if he's number 8,
would not have a bell.
He wouldn't have a bell, which is interesting.
And neither does 9. And again, we don't see Mogget. I have an empty needle here. I don't know if
5 great charters knit to the land. So the 5 great charters knit to the land are probably the stones, together linked hand in hand. Okay. So, here we go. 1 in the person who wear the crown.
So the royal blood.
Touch them. 2 in the folk who keep the dead down. 2, meaning the Aporson and the Yomporson in waiting.
Yep.
So we got the sisters now. 3 and 5 becoming stone and mortar.
So the great stones peppered around, and then the wall.
And then the wall, yes. And 4 sees all and frozen water, being the Claire. Obviously.
Claire, yep.
Okay, who's seeing to the future. Although, Lirael sees into the past.
Yeah. Yeah, because she's
she's the remembrancer.
Aporson, part Claire, so
she's the remembrancer.
The remembrancer, yeah.
Which, some of these titles are becoming a little difficult to.
Question for you, and for our viewing audience. Let us know in the chat below or wherever. If you had to choose one and only one, would you prefer to be a seer or a remembrancer?
Ooh, a remembrancer. Because dang it, then I could actually answer the question. This person did this because history says so. History's written by the winners.
Well, because I was thinking that too. Because one of my wishes, the fantastical wishes, would be to go back in time and learn what ancient Egyptian sounded like. What the Roman accent was, all that kind of stuff. And so I immediately went to remembrancer as well. But if you recall, the further back you remember, the further in depth you have to be.
Go, which creates definitely more of a risk.
20 years or so is fine in the first gate, and I don't know if it ramps up, if it's
say 50
logarithmic or something.
Yeah, then
or
50 or 200.
If it's, or let's just say 100, 1,000, 10,000. Well, that's a higher factor, but yeah. So it's a logarithmic thing instead of a linear thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I imagine if you're at the 8th gate, you should if I were designing the rules of this world, I feel like that should bring you at least to the beginning of the charter, if not just like the beginning of humanity. I don't know. It's hard to say.
How many gates are there? 9?
There's 9 gates. If you pass the 9th gate, that's the final one.
That's
you
dead.
can't come back. Yeah, I believe
that's your hit points have gone past 0, past just passing out. You're at -7.
Or
you're dead.
Or did we get from the first one a line about somebody coming from beyond the 9th gate? Like some of the great ones.
If you come, because there are still, the 9th is the final gate. And if you get somebody coming from the 9th gate, then they're a greater dead.
Yeah.
I think is what they said. Like, the further back you go, the more powerful that death must be, that being must be, because they're able to get past each gate, I think is the idea.
Yeah.
So something, excuse me. So something actually comes from the 9th gate, that's truly impressive.
And I think beyond the 9th gate, you actually have to have someone use...
Someone's got to pull you back.
Use whatever that bell is that sends the user further into death to pull someone further towards life.
Yeah.
So yeah, not only do you have to be powerful, but you have to like convince someone to take your place, basically.
It also seems to me that even though Samus is not going to be the Aporson in waiting, which great relief, really, for everybody involved. But he appears to be an extremely capable charter mage.
Yes.
Not in the least which he's able to create fascinating little mechanical devices.
Yeah, that's true.
But it did seem to me that when he realized, he thought the necromancer who tried to bring him into death was attacking all of those Southerners, Southernlings, I think they call them. Southerlings. I don't really get that term. But anyway, and it turned out to be the woman, actually. Clore, I think her name was. Clore of the Mask.
Oh, Clore of the Mask, yeah.
Clore of the Mask. But he seemed to be very focused. He was like, you know what? Screw it. I don't need the damn bells. I'm just going to go and attack this person. And my first thought was, I wonder if there's another berserker in the family.
Yeah.
Because he seemed awfully determined. And it wasn't really until he didn't have his weapon anymore that he was like, oh, God, someone come help me. Which, he's 17. You have to remember, he's very, very young. His mother was older.
So I do remember something about him from the 3rd book, which I'm not going to mention.
No, don't mention.
Which I'm not going to mention. And there's a clue to it in Lirael that I'm also not going to mention, because there was one tiny little clue. So I'm not going to spoil that. But it was there, and that was interesting.
I don't remember anything from Aporson except Lirael and Sabriel meeting. And she goes, I'm your sister.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, I don't really remember. Well, Lirael itself, as a book by itself, is very much like The Hobbit, in which it is not about like a hero's journey or this whole, bad guy needs to be defeated. It is about a character developing.
It is.
So like in The Hobbit, spoilers, when the dragon dies to some random dude out in the middle of nowhere...
Random being the key. Please don't pay attention to those movies. I can't. Sorry.
It's fine that it wasn't Bilbo who did... Even though Bilbo did find the secret that allowed that, that was Bilbo's journey. It wasn't... The Hobbit was not about defeating a dragon and reclaiming a mountain.
It's there and back again.
It was about Bilbo going out and becoming something more than he was. So the big climax of The Hobbit was him becoming a burglar. It was not about defeating the dragon. And that's
greatest fake it till you make it.
Yeah, and that's the same with this book, where we don't resolve the issue of the big enemy of Uranus or whatever his name is.
Hedge. I mean, Uranus is the big guy, but Hedge being the necromancer.
Hedge and Uranus. We don't defeat him because
We don't even
that's not
defeat-
what this book is.
We don't even defeat Chlor of Masks. Of the Masks.
Yeah. Because this book is about, surprise, Lirael, going, you know...
And Samus.
But mainly Lirael coming into her own, discovering who she is, and accepting the role
of Abhorsen
kind of
rating.
the end of being Abhorsen rating, no longer ever being able to get the sight, etc.
Yeah, and she'll hopefully she'll grow to accept that. Because
Yeah.
even Mogget was actually being somewhat helpful and saying, well, that's all you've ever known. Where you've come from, yeah, that was the most important thing. But you know what? You're not from there anymore. This is where you belong. All of the Sendings know it. The house knows it. Even Mogget was like, I welcome you home. You know, which is kind of weird. Like, Mogget's all for it. He's like, yeah, right, this is awesome. It's like... Because we know what happens when he's not wearing that collar. It's less than pleasant. But anyway, like, the way I saw this book almost is... Remember how we said that at Deadbeat, like when we read Deadbeat for Dresden Files, it's kind of like, okay, now all the foundation is set for the story to kind of really take off.
Yep.
And that's how I kind of feel about Lirael, because, as Paul said, we didn't really accomplish anything apart from the fact that, well, now we know who the true Abhorsen in Waiting is, and we know more or less what the bad guy is going to do.
Yeah.
Unlike in Dresden, where we don't know really what anything's going to happen.
What we accomplished was Lirael growing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I keep switching back and forth between my pattern and my notes. I need my notes on a separate device from my pattern. So one thing, it only really happened in the beginning of the book. And I thought it was going to be something more, so I wrote a note, but it was only one time, so it's fine. But the omniscient narrator mentions the name of mentions that the name of whatever hill, if it had one, is lost. And I'm like, I mean, that's fine, but that doesn't add anything, and I much prefer Douglas Adams' style of going into like a whole little mini-series for some irrelevant detail that is lost to everyone else. Just saying, or it had a name, now it's lost. It's like, okay, then why did you bring it up?
Well, because it marks an area that nobody wants to go to.
Right. But
it's just lending itself to more of the nobody approaches it. They don't.
But that's why I prefer like Douglas Adams style, which adds a bit more, so that even though nobody in the world knows, we know a little bit more.
Yeah, but
purposely keeping us in the dark as well. I mean, even like the little. And it's not the style of this book.
No. But, and here, I mean, again, it's two different writers. You've got one who's doing a very dramatic writing, which is Garth Nix. He wants everything to be mysterious and dark and doesn't want the reader to necessarily know what's going on. For instance, we weren't supposed to know who Lirael's father was. Now, we read the book before, so we knew.
Well.
But Douglas Adams always does it for more of a comedic thing. Yeah. He'll go into a random little tangent, but it's always humorous in some way.
You can still add a bit to it without giving anything away. Like, just some other little mini story around there. Anyways, that only happened the one time. And I noticed I was like, man, I much prefer Douglas Adams' style. Even if it's not like adding comedy, but adding just more world building in there. Anyways, but that was another weird thing from the beginning.
So much world building that goes on in here, though, and it's okay that there's just one little bit.
Right. Yeah, no, I wrote down the note because I thought there was going to be more, and then there wasn't.
There might be in the next book. I just can't remember.
Yeah. And then we get a weird thing where we get talks about traders bragging about like the cinnamon and other spices from the far north, and I'm like, okay, are they in the southern hemisphere? Because cinnamon and most of those spices are more tropical, aren't they?
But they're traders.
Right.
The traders themselves may be from the north, but wherever they've gotten their stuff.
No, they said they were bragging about the cinnamon they got and the other spices they got from the far north.
Yeah, but this area is so strange.
It is.
Like, I mean, don't think of it in terms of Earth.
I know.
Because...
No, I was just trying to place it on the map. And I was like, okay, maybe they're in the southern hemisphere and the far north is near the equator.
Well,
but then we also get the frozen wastes of the north.
There's a map in here.
Well, the map ends just about at the Clares Glacier. And they were talking about far north. So...
well, again, who's to know? I mean, with the whole situation of, say, One Piece, you know...
There's all sorts of different ways. But yeah, so we get cinnamon from the far north, frozen wastes of the north, the northern desert, and it's like, what's going on in the north? I need more information. Or, yeah, I just don't even know. That was kind of a weird thing that...
Well, you can have a desert. Antarctica is a desert.
Yeah, but
it's just a cold one.
But yeah,
snow is supposed. Well, it's not even snow; it's ice.
If you're describing it as frozen wastes, Antarctica, or it sounds more like a frozen waste than a northern desert.
But it's still a desert. The definition of a desert is just a place that it doesn't rain often.
Right.
It's not necessarily there's cacti and it's arid and hot during the day but cold at night. Antarctica is still a desert. It does not rain there. There's only still snow there because, well, it's the same snow that's been there for thousands and thousands of years. But that's neither here nor there. Again, when we're in the non-magical, when we're south of the wall, and the cricket team is approaching the wall, you know, unbeknownst to them.
Yeah.
Only like Prince Samuth is like, ooh, this is no good. But again, I'm very pleased that we don't follow the trope of having the military just being all gruff and questioning everything.
Yeah.
The moment Samuth says, I am Prince Samuth of the Old Kingdom, there is dead in the woods, we need to go.
Yeah.
The guy's like, well shit, you go on Radio HQ, I'm going to take these kids and we are going to run.
Yeah.
And I love that, because the same thing happened in Sabriel. As soon as she said, I am the Aporcin's daughter and I need to get into the Old Kingdom, they were like, right, whatever you need, what do you need? We'll give you supplies, we'll give you, you know, troops that can escort you as far as we can actually go, and then you can be on your merry way. It's just refreshing, because in a lot of books, and in a lot of movies and stories, and it's supposed to serve as, sometimes it's comedic, sometimes it's to just heighten the tension, other times it's just to show that, the military can be really obtuse in certain areas. But it's really refreshing to see a military force that is not obtuse, it's not played up for laughs, and it's not just meant to be an inconvenience to serve as drama. It's just, okay, you know, 10-4, message received, understood, let's do what we have to do. And I mean, as a result, unfortunately, it tends to be short-lived, the scenes with the military, because I feel like the military, by the wall, is extremely competent.
Yeah.
Which is made all the more, you know, irritating, the fact that so many Southernlings have gotten past and have clearly been killed and, you know, have been made into shadow hands or dead hands or what have you. And it's kind of like, dang, this really stinks. But of course there's a lot going on south of the wall. So there's just all these strings being pulled that we can see in this book, and it's leading up to something very, you know, epic. And I remember, so I was lent this series by a friend. She let me read her very precious, you know, hardback first edition books that she was just like, give them back to me. I will give them back. And I remember reading, and she was giving them to me one at a time.
Oh, jeez.
So she didn't let me have all three at once, or all four actually. Across the Wall is another one, with a bunch of mini short stories, I believe. But, so, when I finished this book, and I was like, but what happened? I was so eager to see her next time in class. I was like, okay, I finished. Please give me the other one. Please. Because it was like, holy shenanigans! Everything is building up to a very, very, hopefully exciting climax. And to be honest, again, I've not read this series since I was in college, so I don't remember what happens in the second one, apart from Lirael and Sabriel meeting, and it is a you know, pleasant, which is not really spoilers, because even Sam was already like, oh my god, my mom's gonna be so happy. So at the same time, it's just like, what happens? I don't know. But there are still a few things I question. Like in the epilogue, we have Nick writing to Sam.
Yep.
And he says he's writing using a quill and this handmade paper, which is just crap. But his fountain pen has stopped working.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here going, really?
Yeah, because I wrote that, not that one down, but earlier in the book when talking about the paper can't survive, and it's like...
Because it's machine-made.
Yeah, the whole machine-made is like, what, is it too precise for the Old Kingdom?
I guess, but like the paper I kind of understood. I was like, okay, I guess maybe something would be eating away at it because maybe it's too fine,
right,
too
refined. They say the fungus could be...
Well, yeah, that's what Nick supposes because he's such a scientist.
Yeah.
But he's saying his fountain pen... We use fountain pens. We're very familiar with how a fountain pen works. And all it is
ink goes through a hole.
Yeah, that's
it.
With a controlled flow by the nib. But I guess if the idea is that the paper, having been manufactured, degrades, then maybe part of the pen has degraded? Like, because if you were to look at it...
And that's the problem with a lot of these, like a lot of series or movies or whatnot that have magic and technology not getting along. In a lot of cases, it makes no sense. Like, in Dresden, it works a bit better because
works a little bit better.
He mentions that the effect that magic has on modern technology changes with the times. Like, if he was born a century or so ago, he would have warts and all that kind of stuff. He mentions in one of the books, I don't remember where.
Because that's why he uses a revolver. Because he says it's very hard for magic to disrupt basic physics.
My headcanon with the Dresden series is that it's not that magic is against technology. It's more that magic
They need to get used to each other, almost.
Well, no. That's not my headcanon.
Oh.
My headcanon is that magic messes with things that the user doesn't understand, kind of in a natural aura. So, because Dresden, he's not an electrical engineer. He doesn't know how circuits work. So, my idea is, like, his magic is... Like, magic is kind of enforcing your own patterns on the world around you. So, when your magic, subconsciously is forcing a pattern on a circuit, it's going to do it wrong unless you really know how the circuit works. Is my headcanon with that one. Which would make sense why it would change over time, why he doesn't have trouble with a revolver. Whereas, one would imagine when a revolver was top high-tech, it would be causing troubles.
Okay, so I'm going to have to disagree because Ebenezer, who is far older, has a shotgun.
Yeah.
And a shotgun is actually more complicated than a revolver.
Right.
Well, then by your...
Ebenezer also feels like someone who would search out more knowledge.
Yes, but because Dresden does understand how other electronics and things work. He might not know exactly how to build a computer, but he still gets it. He knows how a light bulb works. He knows how a water heater works, but he'd rather not chance it because he is, and it's been stated in the books so far, he is more powerful than a lot of the other wizards that are around. So he himself has this aura of magic which he can control, he can hold it in, like when he was a guest star on that show.
Try and bottle it up until it explodes.
He can try to hold it in. It's not that it would explode, it's just that, the Red Court vampire kind of threw him off his game a little bit and made him very nervous.
Yeah, it was already going wrong.
Well, yeah, he had set up a spell to try and confine his aura, as it were. So I don't think that it's so much like that.
But then, why would it change over time?
Well, but here's the thing. I think it would change over time in that as magic and technology, mixed a little bit more, it would eventually find an equilibrium and it would settle down. But lately, and I think Jim Butcher is very aware of this, lately we are experiencing a technological boom.
Right.
And so technology is progressing way faster, I think, than magic is able to sort of kind of find an equilibrium with. Which is why he can use a phone if he calms himself. But a really advanced phone, like a smartphone, that's going to blow up in his hand. Or just fizz out and not work. But other things like flashlights, revolvers, shotguns, stuff like that, they'll work because they're a little bit more basic and they're not as elite as computers and things like that.
Right. So, but the whole point is Dresden's universe still, regardless of which headcanon you use, has a little bit of it making sense.
There's more explanation, true.
And so that was a big thing when we just rewatched the Nostalgia Critic doing the various Star Trek movies, and the one he did with Linkarna. There was a civilization who, was anti-technology, but they still had
to a point
dams. They had woven clothing, and it's like all this other stuff. It's like, do you not know what technology means?
No.
Or are you just anti-post-electronics, which is
different.
That's something that always throws me for a loop, because there's groups in the real world who are anti-modern technology, but they draw a line, I guess, at electricity. Like, that's the one step too far, but like, a scythe is technology.
It is. But no, I mean, the Amish do have not really a definitive line. It's just...
Right.
Things... Somebody said this line. I can't remember who... Oh, no, it was the guy in the... What was the name of it? Not Nemesis. The New Generation.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Anyway, the guy was saying how, they believe when they build a machine to do a man's job, you take away something from man. And I think that's sort of kind of the way the Amish approach it.
Yeah.
But again,
I don't know enough about them.
Point. Well, the only thing that I know for certain is that they still use button flies because zippers are too advanced. Now, the only reason I know that before anybody gets ideas, the only reason I know that is because I was studying fashion history. That was brought up. That's where they draw the line in terms of clothing convenience.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that they don't still use looms, which is obviously a machine, or scythes. I think they do still use a form of irrigation that makes it easier to farm things. But I think it is more renouncing electronics, renouncing things that are a distraction from meditation, because they do spend a lot of their days meditating.
But it seems like in a lot of fantasies where fantasy and technology are interacting, the author kind of does the same thing. It's like, here's an arbitrary line which changes, like a fountain pen is not high tech. It's like, here's a thing that the author doesn't understand, and therefore that's technology.
Maybe.
And therefore magic messes up. And for a lot of things, it's really weird.
They do the same thing in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
They try to, but it's explained ever so slightly. In the fourth book, when they're trying to figure out how the reporter is able to hear and see all of the things that she seems to be privy to. And Hermione states that, no electronics can work around Hogwarts in particular, but also around large groups of wizarding communities. Anyway, there's too much magic in the atmosphere and it interferes with the electricity. That being said, they have things like self-inking quills.
Yeah.
And things like that, where it's like, to be totally honest, that's what a fountain pen is. It is a self-inking quill, essentially, except you're just not using the quill of a bird because, that's not hygienic at all. But so it is, like, again, in the Old Kingdom series, it's true, it's not really well defined because they talk about how if a cold wind blows in from the north, i.e. if it comes past the wall into the other country, things tend to malfunction, which is why the army set out there will carry revolvers, grenades, and things like that, but they also carry bayonets and sabers.
Is another thing that almost always gets excluded when there's magic versus technology, and that's explosions. Because that's all a gun is. That's all a grenade is. It's
a chemical reaction.
Yeah, it's high pressure, pushing out of a limited space.
True. Which begs the question, would an air gun work? Or is that too advanced?
Well, because here's the question. If an air gun doesn't work, does putting a piece of potato in the end of a straw and blowing through it work?
Piece of potato.
Or just whatever.
Yeah, a blowgun.
A blowgun. Would that work? Because does breathing work? Because technically it's all kind of the same thing. So, yeah, it's one of those weird things that fantasy does. And unfortunately, the Old Kingdom does this, where it's just like, your idea... Because here's the biggest thing. I know I just stopped my sentence midway, like 5 sentences in a row. But the biggest thing is magic... Actually, this was a completely different thought.
The point is that there's the trope. The trope of magic and technology don't play well together.
Right.
And depending on what series you read, it can vary. For instance, in Fablehaven, I don't think it is ever brought up. In Fablehaven, I don't think there is
any interaction.
Well, no, not that there's not any interaction, because when they're in Australia and they're driving to the monolith to do the thing in the thing, there's magic all around them. There is dead all around them, and there's magic in the air, and the Jeeps are fine.
Yeah.
So in Fablehaven, I think it's the one series that I've read and am fluent with where magic and technology seems to coexist just fine. But the question is, well, what's the point? If you can use magic to do this, why bother bringing the supplies to do it with, chemistry or something else? Then let's just speak a spell to get it to happen, because, well, it's easier and I can carry less stuff. That makes sense. So I guess Fablehaven, being a children's book, by the way, probably has the best explanation. Thank you, Brandon Mull.
Yeah.
But it's a weird trope, and it's not explained well in this book.
Which also comes up to a second trope that I absolutely hate. You usually see it in, like, horror movies, but the science-obsessed person.
Oh, yes.
Where
Nick is our local geek.
But the person who's obsessed with science without knowing what science is. Because here's the big thing that I was going to mention earlier. It's about this point. Magic is about doing something. Science is about understanding something. Those things are not at odds.
Oh, no.
And so many people think science equals technology, so when they do magic versus technology, they just throw in magic versus science. But a scientist would love magic. A lot of magic, like especially the magic in here where we have Charter. Like, the fact that the Charter has runes or has symbols that you can arrange in a certain way and always get the same result. That's science. That's science.
Yeah, it's a program.
Any understanding you have of the Charter is science. Any magic you can do, like Harry Potter, if you go to school to learn a thing, that's science.
Yeah.
It's, covered by science, because that's just understanding something, trying to figure out what the rules are. So we get a line in there, and it's a big one. And I bring it up because I see it all over the place. Page 584. And they're talking about Nick. Or at least Sam is thinking about Nick.
Speaking of which, I know they try to play that Sam is attracted to Lirael before he figures out that she's his aunt, but I don't know. He seems awfully interested in Nick. I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah. So, Nick had only gotten worse as he got older, always asking why. Okay, that's fair.
Curiosity.
He never accepted anything that seemed to contradict his understanding of the etc. It's like,
that's not a scientist. That's not a scientist.
If you do not accept... Now, granted, in medieval ages. We don't know when this takes place, though it does have cars.
It seems to me it's kind of like a 1920s almost, given the way that technology is described.
So we definitely have a thing in our past, so that's fair, but it's hard to see in like the horror movies or anything that takes place in the 90s, because that's when this trope was the biggest, and I think we're moving away from it now-ish. But the idea that somebody who's obsessed with science but also does not accept that something that seems to contradict.
Stubborn.
And it's like, no, science is about, and I've mentioned this on this series before, or on this channel before, but science is about constantly trying to prove yourself wrong. You want to accept everything contradictory, and you try very hard to prove yourself wrong. And it's only by failing to prove yourself wrong with a good effort that you can be somewhat sure that you might be on the right path, until something comes by that questions that, and then you have to try and work against it. That's science, is trying to be wrong.
No, and I agree. But you have to remember also that Nick has lived his entire life in the Southern Kingdom.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's never been close enough to the wall to experience anything like this. Until, of course, we had the scene where the cricket team was too close to the wall, and they actually encountered the dead.
Yeah.
And all of the boys were really, really freaking out. And I was actually very surprised, because it's a flip from what we did in Sabriel.
Yeah.
Because when Sabriel was like, well, crap, everything that's going to happen is going to happen on the other side of the wall. We need to get to my college. We need to get to my school, because even though the other kingdom, whose name I can't, I can't, anyway, they don't actually officially recognize magic, but there is a magic teacher. There are girls at the school learning charter magic. They have the mark. So when we have the scene of Samuth telling them, all right, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to provide a distraction. I want you guys to just beat them down and then you know, try to secure them. And he actually does charter magic in front of them, and they all freak out. And I'm like, well, that's a change. Well, so he went to a boys' school. He went to a
school that's further south, I think.
Further south. But it's like, that confuses me. Like, obviously, during the holidays when he would go home, his father is a very great charter mage. Obviously, he would have learned the charter magic and stuff. But this is my question. Why is there a girls' school close enough to the wall where magic can be taught to these girls so they can be charter mages, but there's not a boys' school? Because we have soldiers in the army who are by the wall who do have the charter.
So there might be, and it just he chose to go to a different school.
He chose, but why would his parents allow that? He is the prince. He's the son of a charter mage in the Borsa.
That might be the thing, is because Nick is a prince, or
no, he's not. He's
not
the
prince.
Nephew of a minister.
He's pretty high up, but it mentions
his uncle is high up.
Mentions in the book that a lot of, or that particular school that he went to, a lot of like foreign royal children go to.
Right, it was him and like two other guys.
Yeah. But that's still a lot. So I think that school was more for royalty rather than charter mage, and then they sent him there because instead of just being an abhorrence child, he is royalty. So being sent there to get more of the royalty training, and then they can teach him magic themselves in the kingdom.
Well, then why did they do that with Elamir? Why did they send her to a more refined girls' school that had more princesses?
Did they not?
No, they didn't. They sent her to Waverly. They sent her to the exact same place where Sabriel learned.
Really? She went to Waverly?
Yes. They talk about how she was on the Waverly hockey team.
Oh.
Yes. She went to the school.
I could have sworn that when it mentioned her school, it was something completely different.
No, Waverly. She went to Waverly. Because he was saying she was giving him an order, and he was like, this is probably exactly what she sounded like when she was captain of the Waverly hockey team. So that's why I'm confused. I'm like, if his sister learned to fence and learned to do all of this at Waverly, because as we know from the previous book, Waverly is I would love to have gone to that school. That sounds awesome. You got music class, then you got fencing class, then you got magic class, and then you can go to lunch. And I'm like, that sounds great. Sign me up. I want to do all those things. But yeah, so I'm confused. Like, there must not be a boys' school close enough to the wall. Otherwise, they would have sent him there.
Yeah.
In my opinion, because, well, again, he needs to learn to do this, especially if they think he's going to be the opossum in waiting. So it makes no sense. Garth Nix. Explain, Nix. Explain! Okay.
Don't steal jokes from a critic.
But he's so funny. He's so very, very funny.
Now, with all that said, there's one trope that was, one bad trope that was avoided that I'm really happy about.
What's that?
When Lirael goes out on an adventure, the place she comes from, unlike every video game, actually gives her high-powered stuff. Like, their highest, their big treasures and
They actually
whatnot.
said, without any sort of, rupees or anything, it's dangerous to go alone. Take this.
Yeah, pretty much.
And she didn't have to trade or pick the right one or whatever.
Yeah, or like go to an armory and choose her own stuff. They gave her a sword, which she kind of figured out was like probably one of their most expensive treasures. Not expensive, but most treasured treasures. Yeah.
Because somebody, I think Mogget or somebody says, oh, it's this, or no, the dog said it's like the sister sword to Sabriel's. Which, hey, makes sense, don't it?
Yeah. And then they also gave her plenty of money and all that. And it makes sense in a video game to not give the player just the most powerful stuff that the kingdom has right off top.
Yeah, it's part of the adventure. But no, and again, it is a nice trope. It's a nice trope of Lirael feels like she's not loved by her cousins or her aunt or anything like that because, well, she was born here, but she doesn't have the sight, which is something that's super important to her. But still, the two most powerful of her cousins, who are Sonar and Rene, or whatever their names are, they are extremely kind. They're like, we didn't get our sight till we were 16. Did no one tell you that? She's like, no. And they're like, and like, I love them because they are caring. They're wise, and they want to help her. They want her to feel like she's not worthless, which is great. Even like when they go to the observatory, they question the guards. They're like, do we really have to blindfold her? She's the daughter of Arel or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's the rule. And they're like, they don't want her to go through this obvious even more segregation, which I love about them. Right. So I was really sad kind of when they had to separate from her but it was also annoying a little that Lirael couldn't see that they truly wanted to help. And even the other librarians, they wanted to be her friend and for her to recognize that. Like, even for her birthday, they knew she preferred to write notes, so what did they do? They got her a beautiful pen with a lovely inkwell, like all this stuff, and it was still a very thoughtful, very kind gift. So I'm hoping that now that she knows all of this
and what her place actually is,
and she has an actual blood family, now she knows who her father was and what happened to her mom and all this jazz. Oh, actually, we don't know what happened to her mom yet. Why her mom left. Do we know about why her mom left from Sabriel? Anyway, but now she knows. So I'm hoping she'll be less mopey in the next book.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what this book was a lot of her growing up, finding her place, and now having the confidence to
do what needs
be
to
her
be
true
done.
self. Which, again, is another one of those tropes that are a little weird. The whole idea of does the path choose the walker the path, or the other way around.
I think you got it.
I think it's the other way around. But yeah, that's one of those tropes. The idea of destiny always seems a little weird, especially when it's like bloodline destiny. But like, in the world that Garth Nix created, you can more go along with it because it is 5 who put themselves in the bloodlines.
Yes.
So there's that, and then it's always feels like it takes the wind out of your sails when it's like, oh, it was this person's destiny. It's like, oh, well then there's really nothing to worry about, was there? It's like, oh, well, all the danger of the book is gone, but it was done decently well in this.
It was done well.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue that when Lirael first contemplates suicide, that was some bit of ancient magic preventing her from actually committing suicide. But then
I feel like that was more just her.
Right, but
Yeah.
she was saying, she wanted to, but her legs wouldn't take her any closer, and she didn't fight that hard. But then on her 16th or 17th, I think 17th birthday, she felt a similar sadness and, suicidal thoughts, and the dog just bit her. I was like, nah! And that's a little bit more of, I don't think so, sister, cousin, whatever.
Yeah.
Related somehow. So, now he wants to be in Paul's life.
Because he's a good boy?
He's a good kitty. But so anyway, we've run our course.
Oh.
Lirael, obviously a fascinating book. Lots to discuss. Lots to compare and contrast with other books that we've read. With other mythologies and whatnot. We didn't really even touch on everything. But
the one big thing is one of my favorite things about this book, and using this book as kind of a not escapism, but just fantasy.
Yes,
is I want to be a librarian in the Claire's library.
Sounds like a pretty cool library.
Like, even with with little office, your job is do library work, but then you have the rest of the day to kind of do your own studies and just you don't have to worry about food because the Claire do the food. Though you may have to.
Occasionally, you'll have to cook.
Yeah.
I like how they do that. I think that's good. And actually, Sabriel does the same thing with her children, because Elamir and Samith have to do what I think she calls perspective.
Yeah.
Right? And so they have to once a week or whatever for a number of hours. They have to do
something
the same job as one of the servants.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Even though, the servants don't really push because it is still kind of a weird thing.
Still
but
the prince and princess, so But it's still. I think I think it is good.
But I want a whole trilogy set inside the library because I think we could.
Well, probably there is. There are more books. Garth Nix has written, I think, 2 more books besides Clariel being a prequel. There's a sequel to. Or a continuation to A Porson, and then I think there's a short story as well, and then Across the Wall. I've not actually read Across the Wall, which I believe is much like Side Jobs.
I don't remember if I've read it or not.
I own it. It's downstairs.
Yeah.
I believe it's a series of short stories, but the cover, I'm trying to think of what the cover looks like. It shows the A Porson and somebody fighting alongside her. I don't know if it's Lirael and her nephew. I don't know if it's a bunch of short stories about Sabriel and Touchstone. I can't remember.
Nope. No idea.
I'll have to look at it.
We'll find out at some point.
But so anyway, a fascinating read. Obviously, lots to talk about, and we will conclude with the Porson in a few weeks, I suppose.
Yep.
But next week, dear viewers, I know you're all very
Sunday,
excited.
not Saturday.
Oh yes, our episode will be on Sunday at 4 p.m.
Eastern.
Eastern. Thank you. Paul and I will not be here. We'll be traveling on Saturday.
Yeah.
So.
But we are doing one that the book that caused me to really push for this channel, Dragon's Egg, by Robert L. Ford, which takes place on a neutron star. So, getting away from fantasy.
I guess it's a small neutron. Or that looks more like a petri dish, but anyway.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Written by a astrophysicist about a dragon who lives on a nova star.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see how good it is. I don't know. I have reservations. Oh, it's a male author, and it's not Garth Nix. It's new jam. When was it written?
Yeah.
It was written. 1980.
Yeah.
My hopes are not high.
Well,
unless there just aren't any female or human characters whatsoever.
So there's that. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about the test. Lirael definitely passes the Bechdel Wallace.
Yeah, I mean.
The racism based ones, not
applicable. And then again, the LGBT, not applicable.
Was there a female character who wasn't a main that had a plot line unrelated to the main? Not really. Again.
Well, Lirael was the main.
Well, we get some with what's her name? Elamir.
Not really a
she doesn't really have plot though.
No, she's just kind of already established herself as the elder sibling who is going to one day be queen, and she takes it extremely seriously.
Yeah, and really none of the other Claire have anything going on with them.
No. And we see briefly what Sabriel and Touchstone are up to.
Now, granted, none of the other guy characters have plots either. It doesn't feel like so. Yeah, that's more of a not applicable just because there's not enough characters in in most of the journey.
I mean, unless you could. No, because the disreputable dog is too old.
Yeah.
She already knows who she is.
Yeah.
She's the disreputable dog. Or the disreputable bitch.
So yes, there's that. Next week, Dragon's Egg.
On Sunday, 4 p.m.
Sunday,
Eastern.
4 p.m.
Eastern Standard. So yes.
And that's as far as I got.
You
cannot tell any difference.
I probably got a couple of rounds in. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
There he goes.
Bye-bye, Osiris.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.